Hi, this is Christ Lutheran Vail Leadership Podcast, episode number 6. And today I want to talk to you about how things get done in a church. Now, a lot of people think that the things that happen in a church are mostly done by the staff or the pastor, people employed by the church. And that's simply not true. Really, all the great things that happen in a church are done by the members of the church, the people who are faithful and do work for the church. Sometimes it's behind the scenes, sometimes you don't see it. But all the great stuff that happens in a church is done by the people of the church. And I want to talk to you a little bit today about how that's done and what I think is probably the best way that work gets done in a church. And then I want to work my way down to probably what's the least effective or maybe the worst way for stuff to get done in a church. So we're going to talk about that today. And the best way, I believe, this is my opinion, that work gets done in a church is what I would call a strong discipleship team. And what I mean by a strong discipleship team is that you have a bunch of people, team members, who come together and they do work as a team to accomplish some sort of job within the church. And it's a team. And typically you'll have a discipleship team lead or something like that, but you have somebody leading the team. And this person would be somebody who's very humble. It'd be someone who knows that even if no one else in the church sees the work that the team's doing or the work that he or she is doing, he knows that God sees the work that's being done and he's okay with it. Because sometimes the work in the church is done behind the scenes, nobody sees it and very few people see it. And so a strong discipleship team lead would be a person who understands that even though everyone else may not see the work that's being done, God sees it. This person, this strong discipleship team leader, would connect the team's mission to the mission of the church. And they would constantly remind the team that whatever they're doing in the church is somehow connected to the mission. They would love and they would encourage team members. They would develop team members. If they see a weakness in a team member, they might work with that person to help in that weakness. And perhaps even looking around and saying, I think this person could lead this team in the future. And so that person is taught some leadership skills so that at some point the discipleship team lead would then look to have that person replace them. Ultimately, the team would find the resources to get the work done. And a really good team isn't necessarily tied to making sure that they get all the approvals that they need. They know the mission of the team. They know the mission that they're supposed to do, and they're boldly going to go out and do that work. That is a great team. And some of the advantages of that team is that through this process, discipleship is taught. As a strong team lead acts in a way that Jesus would want to act, they model good discipleship skills for the people on the team. They look around and they try to find people that aren't connected yet, and so they involve those people into the mission of the church. And they identify skills in other people, and they say, I see that skill, and I see how I could use that skill on my team. And so they start to raise up people onto the team, and they start to raise up leaders on the team. The great thing about a really good team under a good leadership is it doesn't require a whole lot of staff time or pastor time. They kind of do the work that they see needs to get done. They connect it to the mission of the church, and they do the work. You may have seen this before, but one of the ways that you could look at this is called the leadership square. Would look something like this. And basically, this would be I do and you watch. So a team leader would say, I'm gonna do this once you watch. And then I do and you help. And then you do and I help. And then you do and I watch. And that's kind of a way to think about how you could bring another leader or bring another team member into a team. It's called the discipleship square. That, in my opinion, is the best way to get things done in a church. The team acts as a kind of a way to support each other, to make sure that the mission's getting done. It's a way to love each other. It almost becomes like a small group. It's just fantastic. And so a church that is filled with strong team leaders that can run teams and do the work of the church is really a huge blessing. Now, that's the best way, but that doesn't always happen. The next way, so that's just, I'm going to call that the discipleship team. All right. The next way is perhaps where you've got a strong team lead but perhaps this person who's leading a team has some weaknesses or deficiencies. And this is probably where most teams are, because no leader is perfect. Jesus was the only perfect leader, and he gives a lot of grace, and we know that we're saved regardless of how well we lead a team. But here are some things that a team leader might be weak at that might reflect on the ability of the team to get some work done. So it's very much like what I just talked about, but perhaps the person who's the team leader is not looking around trying to find ways to develop discipleship in the team or through the example. It's maybe somebody who lacks initiative. It might be somebody who lacks humility. Somebody who's not able to encourage everybody else on the team. Somebody who's not has the ability to raise up other team leaders. Somebody who doesn't connect the mission of the team with the mission of the church. All those things are important, and so if one of those is lacking, then the team may not be as effective as it could be. And so a growth path for that person would be for them to step back and say, am I looking at ways to encourage leaders on the team? Am I looking for ways to encourage people on the team? Am I looking for ways to develop leaders on the team? Am I looking throughout the congregation trying to find people that I could get involved in the mission of the church and perhaps be on my team? Are there ways that I can develop resources that don't exist now? Maybe as a team we could come together and develop those resources. And so basically the second one is what I would say is a strong lead, a strong team leader, but it's somebody who's not necessarily looking at the big picture and trying to develop the team and encourage the team. There's maybe some sort of deficiency on the team, but because the leader is not necessarily, and this is all of us, by the way. None of us have perfect leadership skills. The third way would be a team without a leader. Maybe a team has come together to do some work, but no team leader has been identified, and the team doesn't know who's necessarily leading. Obviously, you can see this could cause all sorts of problems. The team might lack direction. It might now sometimes these teams can be fantastic, and then a leader is brought up within the team to basically lead the team, but it can take some time. It might take time for the team to meet together and to find out what their mission is, how that mission is aligned with the mission and goals of the church. And as you can tell, without strong leadership, the team may take a while before they finally get to what it is that they would like to do. So the team may struggle to accomplish goals. The team may not know the connection between their team mission and the vision of the church. Another thing that could happen is the team may have a good idea and they want to move forward, but without a leader who knows kind of the process, they might be afraid to move forward on the team goals. They may feel like they're lacking permission to move forward in those goals. And so a growth path for this team would be for them to identify a leader. The team could say, we see some leadership skills in you and we want you to lead us. And then the team can show a lot of grace to that leader. They follow that leader. If you've got a team with some very humble people that aren't in it for themselves, but they're in it for the goal of the team, they could very well identify somebody and say, you're our team leader. However you lead us, we're gonna move forward. We're gonna show you a lot of grace. May take some time, May go through some struggles and some heartaches, but eventually we'll get to the goal that we want to get to. All right. So those are three ways that the pastor or the staff is maybe not necessarily involved in the team at all. Now there's a fourth way, and that's basically where there's a staff person that's leading the team. And this can happen quite a bit in churches that have lots of teams, and they're a big church or a church with a lot of staff members. And so some churches believe that every team should be led by a staff member. That can get very expensive, and as the church begins to change and grow in the United States today, that may not even be possible. But you could have a team that's led by a staff person. So that person would have the authority and the direction of the church to do the work of the team. They lead the team. They recruit the team. The disadvantages of this is it costs money, and that person may require lots of interaction with the staff or the pastor to be able to make sure the team's going in a forward direction. It's just basically it's not a bad way, but it does require some resources. The very, very last way that things could get done in a church is this one, where basically the staff, paid staff, does the work. So they don't even have a team behind them. They just do the work. Now, there are some times where mission critical stuff happens, and because of the complexity of the team, or because of the nature of the work that they're doing, you're going to have a staff person that's leading a team. I'm not saying this is bad, but you necessarily can't have every team to do this, because it just would cost so much money. It would take up so much resources. And then the final way, probably in my opinion, the worst way to get anything done in a church is just to have the staff member do the work. They're not involved in a team. They're just doing the work. Obviously, if you had a church where all the work in the church was done by a staff member, that staff member is going to, you're going to have lots and lots and lots of staff members, and they're going to be very, very burned out. And it's simply not, that doesn't grow the kingdom. It basically gets work done, but it doesn't grow the kingdom. And so this is probably the way you never want to do it. Now, the funny thing is that at Christ Lutheran Vail Church, when you're first starting out, things pop up out of the blue that have to be dealt with in a very quick manner. There's not enough time to pull together a team. There's not enough resources to pull together. And so the staff would end up doing the work. If it's very brief, if it's very short, if it's like a one-time thing, pretty much those things happen all the time at a church. And so you're going to have that. But if this is something that's recurring, if this is something that the staff member says, this is going to happen on an ongoing basis, then that staff person should try to get a person, or some people in the church around him to do that work, and then perhaps even develop a strong team leader within that group, and then the staff person would pull out of that group and let that team move forward. And a church that really understands this process and understands how the work is going to get done in a church will propel the church forward and do amazing things, because the work of the church is great. The mission field, the harvest field is great, and workers are needed, leaders are needed, and developing leaders is one of the big things at a church. And so I pray that God richly blesses Christ Lutheran Vail Church as we move forward in His mission, and we'll see you at the next episode.